Coming up on KPBS Evening Edition, San Diego's congressional delegation gathers for a rare forum downtown. We put them on the record about healthcare, defense spending, and more.
Plus, a look inside San Diego's emergency rooms and the people who use them again and again. KPBS Evening Edition starts now.
Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Joanne Farian.
I'm Dwayne Brown. All 5 of San Diego's congressional delegates gathered today for a forum put on by the Regional Chamber of Commerce. The topics range from defense spending to federal health care law. KPBS Metro reporter Katie Orr was there, and she joins us from the News Center. Katie, let's start with Congressman Darrell Issa. He held a hearing recently on birth control that was pretty controversial.
That's right, Dwayne. Issa heads up the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. He recently held a hearing regarding whether the government can mandate that religious institutions that act as employers and provide health insurance have to provide things like birth control, even though it may violate their religious principles. Critics said he didn't have enough women on his panel, but Issa defended the hearing today.
We think it was a good hearing. We think it was very unjust to imply that somehow we were slighting women. Remember, it was about the question of can you mandate anything to a church or church school.
You also spoke with Congressman Duncan Hunter, who has weighed in on a case involving a Camp Pendleton Marine. Tell us more.
Right. This week, Sergeant Gary Stein will face a separation hearing for writing anti-Obama messages on his Facebook page. Hunter says the military needs to decide how it will handle social media situations like this in the future.
The Marine Corps and the military need to establish hard and fast rules for social media because they don't exist right now. So what this Marine did, in my opinion, was voice his opinion to a hypothetical situation to his friends on Facebook. In my opinion, that's protected speech. And I think that's what the military needs to look at, is what is protected speech and what is not. If he was talking to his friends in a bar about the same subject, he would not be being separated from the United States Marine Corps right now. But because it was on Facebook, he is, even though he was not speaking in uniform, nor was he speaking for the United States Marine Corps, and he explicitly stated that. So that's kind of what the issue is.
Katie, obviously the defense industry has a huge presence in San Diego. Did any of the representatives address budget cuts in it?
Yes, Dwayne, they all did. The feeling seems to be that San Diego will benefit as the action begins to concentrate more on the Pacific military action and resources are transferred here. But there is also some concern that San Diego could be hurt if the president's proposed $671 billion in defense spending cuts go through. I spoke with Congressman Bob Filner and Congressman Brian Bilbray about that.
In the military budget has potential to affect us, I think, but the 5 congressmen from San Diego work very closely to make sure that we stay viable in terms of our numbers of people here, the strength of the bases, some of the special units that are here. So we are all subject to national things, but we could do things here locally that can free us from some of those constraints.
The challenge, though, is understanding that we do have new fiscal restraints, but one of the major mandated responsibilities of the federal government is national defense. There's a lot of things we do that aren't in our federal mandate that cities and counties and states can do, but national defense is one that only the federal can do, and the federal government really has to bear that responsibility and make it a priority. Hopefully the most cost-effective way of protecting the public and our nation is what's essential. And we can do better. We can look at processes that actually reduce costs but increase the resources going to the personnel and to the equipment, and not necessarily being distracted by a lot of political maneuvers.
And Katie, what did the delegation have to say about the president's health care law the Supreme Court is now mulling over?
Well, their views fell probably predictably along party lines, with the Republicans opposed to it and the Democrats supporting it. Representative Susan Davis says the country will have to deal with a lot of questions if the law is struck down.
What's going away first? Are we going to take away the credit, the opportunity for small businesses to have a discount on their taxes, essentially. If they provide health insurance, are we going to take away pre-existing conditions for children? Are we going to take away women's health care, which is a big issue in the Affordable Care Act? Are we going to take away the opportunity for families to put their young people, their students, on their health care? Which do we, what do you get rid of first? And so I think when people think about that, they may be, if they're not supportive of the Affordable Care Act, they may feel that, well, maybe this is something that we really do need to have.
Representative Susan Davis and KPBS Metro reporter Katie Orr. Most of us hope we'll never visit a hospital emergency room, but for a small number of San Diegans, the experience has become routine. Joanne explains at the Evening Edition Roundtable.
A special series in UT San Diego has been documenting the financial and emotional toll of so-called frequent flyers to San Diego's emergency rooms. They are the patients who visit the ER several times a year and in some cases several times a week. In a moment, we'll speak with the reporters who spent months working on this story. But first, here's a video clip from their series.
In San Diego, a small group of men and women used the 911 system in a way that it was never intended, as a means of primary health care. This group is less than 1% of the population, yet it accounts for more than 17% of all ambulance and paramedic calls in the city, leaving large public costs in its wake.
Think of the resources that were taken away from other people. Think of the wear and tear on everything in this city, every kind of infrastructure you can imagine, police, fire, ambulances. Think about what it did to the waiting times of people that have legitimate problems in the emergency department. Just the frustration levels of the nurses, the doctors, and everybody who's taking care of somebody for a condition that they took care of them a week ago.
Looking at this population as an example, Dr. Dunford feels that there are answers to something much larger.
The population I'm talking about is the worst of the worst. And I'm talking about finding fixes for those people. There's a wake effect that will extend across the entire healthcare system if we can solve those problems.
This story will take you alongside first responders and inside the emergency room, where you will see how the disconnect between prevention and care has expanded the burdens on the system and the cost to the public.
Joining me now are John Gonzalez with the Center for Health Reporting and James Gregg. He's a video journalist with UT San Diego. Thank you both for being here.
Oh, thanks for having us.
So the video sets up the problem, but tell us more about who these people are, the 1% using these services.
It's actually 0.08% technically. These are folks who are the toughest cases in the healthcare system in a lot of ways. They're folks who are on track to use our call 911 at least 6 times in the course of a year. Most people might do that 1 or 2 times their whole life. Though they're a small percentage of the city, they account for over 17% of all paramedic and ambulance calls in the city.
So are they the homeless population, the indigent? Are they the sickest population? Who are they?
You know, there are a few things. They are very sick. They are very sick. Most of them suffer from chronic ailments that many of us suffer from. Diabetes, hypertension. Some of them have liver disease. But there's also a lot of hard bark there. There's folks who are mentally ill, folks who cope with substance abuse.
So, James, you shot the video, you took these photos. Some of them are just amazing, and I wondered when I was looking at them on your website, how did you get these people to agree to have their photo taken and agree to be in this video?
Everybody's an individual, and so I think that for each of them it was different, but mostly they're just people. And so I think that you, just by being a person yourself and being very open and kind to people and honest, there was quite a lot of participation, actually. I didn't get told no a lot.
And you capture moments of really, you know, I think one of your stories talks about the worst day or one of the worst days of their lives being in this situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, John, you mentioned, you talked about some of the statistics. Do we know how much all of this costs?
A rough estimate just for 911 calls, just for paramedic and ambulance charges, is $20 million in the course of a year. We don't have a solid number in terms of ER costs. There's some debate as to the kind of technical way you bill those things, but those costs are substantial also. And then there can be jail cost. other cost inherent in tracking these people on a social level.
Now, in today's story in UT San Diego, you point out that a high percent, most in fact, of these people have insurance.
Yeah, they do. They do. Most of them have insurance of the public variety, which is a distinction, but they do have insurance. And part of the problem is that Medi-Cal, that's basically Medicaid, we just call it Medi-Cal here. Basically, you got to wait an awful long time to first of all apply for it, reapply for it each year. And when you're in it, you do have to wait an awful long time for an appointment. But so do people with private insurance. And that's one of the reasons the ER has become a viable alternative for a lot of folks.
In the video, you mentioned the disconnect, though, between preventative care and sort of ending up in the emergency room. And many of us know, like you say, we have to wait for a doctor's appointment. Is this just, you know, people not taking care of themselves, not in a position to perhaps take care of themselves, and not being able to sort of make that appointment wait 2 weeks? I mean, is it just a completely different situation, or?
The population that we profiled was primarily homeless. So, you know, depending on your point of view, you might think that they are unwilling to take care of themselves. We met a lot of people who were unable to take care of themselves as well, so it's a mix.
James, was there someone you met or a particular moment because you spent months documenting all of this that really kind of hit home for you, the one that kind of summed up the story?
Yeah, a gentleman named Raoul Hirsch for me, well, I mean, not just him, but I think that he's the one that kind of grabbed me the most because I spent a lot of time with him. And getting a chance to try to really understand where he's coming from in this whole phenomenon of going back and forth. He ended up, since we began the story, he's been in the emergency room over 70 times, and he's been in jail twice. And a really nice guy. I really enjoyed being around him, but just trying to understand how he could just continue to go through this cycle over and over again, and very predictably, where he would sleep outside most of the time, and if he felt like it, he would just go to the ER. Sometimes he would have legitimate injuries, and he was in the ICU twice, at least, I think, with head trauma. And trying to understand what he wants out of his experience and what he's really trying for. I don't know that I ever understood it, but it was very contradictory because he would be intelligent and engaged and talk about goals that he has, and then at other times it would be that those cares weren't there in quite the same way.
Well, I know there's so much more to all of this on the website, at the UT San Diego website, as well as a continuing series. There's more to come tomorrow and the day after. James and John, thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A San Diego study attempts to change the conversation about climate change. We'll talk to the study's lead scientist in just a moment. And we'll show you how the ancient art of meditation is helping heal the psychological scars of warfare. This is KPBS Evening Edition.
Tonight on KPBS. At 8 on American Experience, Grand Coulee was more than a dam, it was a proclamation. In the wake of the Great Depression, it restored faith in the U.S. government. Then at 9:30 on American Experience, see how the building of the Panama Canal not only connected oceans, but signaled America's emergence as a global superpower. And at 11, parents, teachers, and health professionals demonstrate nature's powerful role in children's health and development. That's tonight on KPBS.
What are things made of?
So all life, us, Justin Bieber, everything made of carbon chains?
It all comes down to elements.
And this must be hydrogen.
What are they? Why do they behave the way they do?
Tastes like salt.
New York Times tech guru David Poe gives an off-the-charts tour of the periodic table.
My globes are on fire. I'm seeing atoms.
Hunting the elements on Nova.
Wednesday at 9 on KPBS. KPBS Evening Edition is made possible by Joan and Erwin Jacobs and by
Many veterans from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan are reluctant to seek treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder because of the stigma attached to asking for help. KPBS reporter Allison St. John says the VA is testing an ancient meditation technique to see if more vets around the country might be willing to try mantram repetition.
Roger Lewis is a Vietnam vet. He works in the patient library at the VA Medical Center in La Jolla.
This is like a barber shop some mornings where the guys come in and we talk.
Lewis is a bit of a mentor to the patients who come in looking for books to help them understand the health problems they're facing. Sometimes he gives them a flyer for a class he took 4 years ago. Lewis says mantram repetition is a technique to control the mind, but it also effectively controls emotions and behavior.
When I get really angry, when I feel that need to do something stupid that could get me in trouble, then I use a mantra. Or I turn away, and as I'm walking away, I got to calm down and everything. That's when I use my mantra, and I get to a safe point to whereas I can function okay.
What is a mantram? It's a word or phrase that you choose. For example, Ave Maria or Hare Rama. And in times of stress, you repeat it over and over again silently to yourself.
I love mine because I think it's really powerful and hypnotic. You know, it calms me down. Sometimes it's calmed me down so much, like I am right now, just thinking about it. I could easily shed a tear and, you know.
In a classroom next to the library, Jeffrey Snodgrass, a newer vet from the first Iraq War, is in his 4th week of doing mantram repetition to help his PTSD symptoms.
This is another tool in my arsenal to fight the demons in my head. It works very well for sleep because a lot of times, especially if you wake up in the middle of the night with some sort of, you know, I have terrible nightmares. And, you know, I'm on medication to help that, but sometimes medication alone doesn't help. So if you wake up in the middle of the night just, you know, flooded with memories, it can help you banish those memories long enough to get back to sleep.
Victor Ozuna got back from Iraq in 2004.
Sleeping was easy. Being awake was hard.
Ozuna says mantram repetition has helped him stay in the present.
Yeah, it was like you were here, but your mind was somewhere else. It's like the same anger you carry during battle was with you all the time. Except that it was just internalized. Like I could be really calm right here, but inside of me, it was not calm at all. The mantra kind of controls it. Brings me back to where I'm at right now. So
it gives you control over
my mind.
Your mind.
Mm.
Yeah. Ozuna says the VA's whole approach to PTSD has changed. He says mantram repetition is an example of how they're giving veterans more options besides drugs to control their symptoms.
The most important thing is that the VA is taking a step in the right direction.
Okay.
Now they have to reach the right audience.
That's what Jill Borman of the VA Medical Center is trying to do. She's conducted clinical trials and found that veterans who use mantram repetition, along with the traditional therapy of drugs and counseling, were twice as likely to report relief from their symptoms as those who use the traditional therapies alone.
Certainly in the scientific community, some people would say the word's not out yet. That's why we're doing these research studies, because you need to do more rigorous studies in different populations. On the other hand, I think the VA is really opening its doors to complementary therapy, patient-centered care, looking for integrative therapies where you can integrate the complementary types of things with traditional medicine. So I think it's becoming easier, let's put it that way.
Borman's been awarded $1 million grant to see if veterans around the country are open to non-traditional approaches. Phil Landis says he was initially skeptical. Landis was a platoon leader in Vietnam. Now he's the president and CEO of Veterans Village in San Diego, one of the nation's most respected centers for homeless vets. He took the class in mantram repetition 7 years ago, and he says he's still reaping the benefits.
You don't know I'm doing it. It's the beautiful thing about it. And so, but it's just automatic now. And I chose the word that Gandhi utilized for this same purpose, because I figured that, you know, he probably knew what he was talking about.
Landis says he'd already spent years working through the trauma he experienced in Vietnam before he came to mantram repetition.
And maybe if it had been introduced to me early on, and if I had practiced it, that I could have, you know, short-stopped a lot of my own journey. Maybe it would have been a tool that I could have utilized early that would have helped me so that I didn't have to spend so much time, you know, dealing with my own issues.
KPBS reporter Allison St. John. The Veterans Health Administration says about 25% of vets who seek health care have PTSD, but only half of them seek treatment. Scientists will admit they may not always be the best messenger when it comes to educating the public about global warming, so they're taking a different approach. Joanna's talking about that at the roundtable.
Local scientists, researchers, and communications experts are joining together to find new ways to educate the public about our climate change concerns here in San Diego. They'll be helped with a $1.25 million federal grant that will be used to target community leaders who can better get their message to the public. Leading the effort is my guest, Michel Boudrier. He's a marine scientist at USD. Thank you so much for being here, Michel.
My pleasure.
So, do we need more information about climate change, or are we just not paying attention to the information we already have?
It's not necessarily that we need more information. I think we need to be clear that the information is presented in a way that is easier for people to understand in some ways. We need updated information as well. And in our case, we really wanted to focus on local and regional information. So the climate data that we want to present are data that are affecting local climate, regional climate. And so there's different ways of presenting the same data, and it's to focus on the data that is sort of relevant to people.
So is your project aimed at getting rid of misinformation?
It's more to present new information and present it potentially in a different way that makes it easier for people to understand. There is some misinformation there, but not when you present it from a scientific perspective. The misinformation usually comes outside the scientific realm.
From politics. Let's talk a little bit about that. Isn't this sort of politicized? I mean, politics has really targeted climate change.
It has, and it has polarized the issue, and what we are really working very hard to do is to be a neutral and objective platform, to present it as, here are the facts, here's what's going on, here are some of the issues that we are seeing happening right now, issues that we think could happen in the near future or 20, 30 years from now, and to try to really get away completely from the political discussion and focus on the more neutral perspective. As a scientist, I work in a world of facts. We want to present the facts. We want to present them in a very fair way and try to depoliticize the whole discussion.
But the people that you are targeting, these community leaders, now you've told me earlier you can't disclose who they are.
Correct.
But presumably they are on sides of the political spectrum if they are leaders in some way.
They are completely across the spectrum from every walk of life, every area. So we're talking about leaders of communities, Hispanic communities or black communities. We're talking about business leaders, elected officials from both parties, from both sides. So yes, they are coming from very different perspectives. But our goal is to show them this is what we know, what do you know, because it's been a dialogue, to see what they know, where they sit, what they're concerned about, and how they may actually become, in our case, potentially helpful messengers for this discussion.
And are you surprised by what they already know or perhaps what they don't know when it comes to climate change?
In the report, and it's available on the website about the key influential interviews, the great news is that close to 90% of them were concerned and understood the issues that related to climate change, and were doing something in their personal life that said that they're concerned about it. Yet 90% also felt that the other key influential community leaders maybe were not so concerned or were not doing something. So that's one of the interesting dichotomies of a person's response versus a response to the people that they maybe interact with on a regular basis.
So then the goal, if you educate this group, what do you hope they do in turn to the rest of us here in San Diego?
Part of the reason why we wanted to work with the key influential community leaders and business leaders, the thought leaders really of San Diego, is to have a situation where they could be a portal to their own community. Maybe they will be the messenger because their community will respond to them better. Maybe they will be the ones who will work with us to help develop a message that's more appropriate for the business community, for example, for elected officials. And the idea is that this will be a ripple effect, that they will therefore be able to approach their communities, and then a larger group of people will therefore be educated and will learn more about the facts and make smart decisions.
So this study really is aimed at San Diego. What are some of the San Diego specific concerns when it comes to climate change?
In both surveys done in 2010 by the San Diego Foundation and our public opinion survey we did last fall, as well as some of our interviews, water for sure is one of the issues. People are very concerned with droughts and patterns of rainfall and water. Increased wildfires, with both the frequency of them and the size of them, those are two very big ones. There are some concerns about sea level rise as a port city. Clearly that's something we need to consider. There's even concerns about increases in temperature affecting heat waves and public health issues. And so there are some connections between the science of climate change and other impacts on the population. So those are the ones that came up the most. I would say the other one that's real interesting for people is they're very concerned for the future generations. That's one of the things that really impacts everybody. They're concerned for their children and their grandchildren.
You mentioned a website. Where can people find more information?
It's at sandiego.edu/climate. It's connected to the San Diego Regional Climate Education Program, which is the team that has USD, Scripps Institute of Oceanography, Institute of Oceanography, Cal State San Marcos, and San Diego Foundation as well.
Michelle Boudria, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Your thoughts about the cost of health care are coming up in the public square. This is KPBS Evening Edition.
I'm Gwen Eiffel on the next News Hour, helping small-scale farmers in East Africa become successful business owners. That's Tuesday on the PBS News Hour.
They're symbols of the British monarchy. Grand buildings that have stood for centuries. Host Fiona Bruce tours the greatest royal places in England, uncovering incredible stories along the way. Secret passageways under Windsor Castle, the bombing of Buckingham Palace, why Queen Victoria relocated this grand marble arch. It's an amazing journey through the Queen's Palaces.
Tour the Queen's Palaces, Monday at 10 on KPBS.
The American people have named PBS the most trusted source of news and public affairs
For the 8th year in a row.
Trust.
The American people have spoken.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the Public Square on KPBS Evening Edition. Tonight, your comments on an interview I did yesterday with the head of Scripps Health, Chris Van Gorder. Van Gorder says emergency rooms have become the de facto national health care plan, and that's expensive. Here are some comments from KPBS.org. Educator says, I contend that much of the exorbitant costs associated with inpatient hospitalization and the increased day-to-day costs of running a large organization like Scripps are directly attributable to the bloat of managers and administrators now found in those hierarchies. And Ben 72 says, living in a society comes with responsibilities, not just benefits. One of those responsibilities is not to burden your unwilling neighbors with your problems. Be an ant, not a grasshopper. Well, if you have a comment, you can email me directly, jfarian@kpbs.org, or you can go to kpbs.org and also join this online conversation.
You can watch and comment on tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great night.